Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of this podcast. My name is Clara, and I'm really happy you're here today. This space was created especially for English learners who want to improve by listening to real conversations, real emotions, and real stories. Learning English is not only about grammar or vocabulary. Sometimes the biggest challenge is fear of speaking, fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged. And today, we're going to talk about exactly that. I invited someone whose story really touched me when I first heard it. It's a story about silence, fear, courage, and transformation. Daniel, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Clara. Honestly, it means a lot to be here, especially in the first episode. And I'm happy to share my story because I know many people feel the same way I once did.
I'm sure they do. So, Daniel, let's start from the beginning. Tell us a little about who you were before English became part of your life.
Well, today I'm 25 years old, but this story really begins when I was about 16. I grew up in a small town. Life was simple. My family worked hard, my school was small, and like many students, I studied English in class. But there was one big problem. I was silent.
Silent.
Yes, not because I had nothing to say, but because every time English appeared, I froze.
What do you mean?
In class, if the teacher asked a question in English, my mind would go completely blank. My heart would start beating fast. My palms would sweat. Even if I knew the answer, the words just wouldn't come out.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It was, and the strange thing is, I actually understood English. I could read it, I could write simple sentences, I could even understand videos sometimes. But speaking felt like a prison.
Do you remember a moment when that fear became very clear?
Yes, there's one moment I'll never forget. I was in high school. One afternoon, the teacher gave us a speaking activity. Each student had to stand up and say something about their dream. Simple, right?
It sounds simple, but probably not in that moment.
Not at all. When my turn came, I stood up in front of the class. There were about 30 students watching me. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to speak, and the sentence came out like this. I want go America be doctor.
Oh.
Some students laughed, not loudly, but quietly. And sometimes that quiet laughter hurts even more.
Yes, because you still hear it.
Exactly. In that moment, my face burned. I wanted to disappear. I sat down and promised myself something terrible. I told myself I will never speak English again.
That must have stayed with you for a long time.
It did, for years. After that day, people started seeing me in a certain way. In group projects, classmates would say, just let Daniel type. He doesn't talk anyway. Even teachers stopped asking me questions.
That must have been painful.
Very painful. Imagine having ideas, dreams, opinions, but feeling like you have no voice. Eventually, I started believing what people said about me. You're shy, you're bad at English, you're too quiet.
But deep down, you knew that wasn't true.
Exactly. I wasn't quiet. I was afraid.
So what happened after school?
When I was 19, I got a job in a call center.
Wait, a call center?
Yes.
And that means speaking English with customers.
Exactly. And here's the crazy part. During the interview, I said I could speak English.
You said you could.
Yes. I lied.
That must have been terrifying.
It was. They gave me a headset, a computer, and 1 week of training. Then my first call came. A client said, "Hi, can you help me reset my password?" And I panicked. The only thing I could say was something like, "Yes, sir. You give password, I reset you."
Oh, no.
The customer got frustrated. He asked, "Are you even trained to speak English?"
That must have hurt.
That night, I didn't go home immediately. I went to the rooftop of the building and just sat there, looking at the city lights. and I cried. I remember thinking, I can't live like this forever.
That sounds like a turning point.
It was. I took a deep breath and said something to myself that changed everything. I can think in my language. I can learn to think in English too.
That's a powerful realization.
That night, I made a strange decision.
What decision did you make?
I stopped studying English.
Wait, you stopped studying?
Yes, I decided I wouldn't study English anymore. I would start living in English.
What do you mean by that?
I started doing something very simple. I looked at objects around me and described them in English. A spoon, a chair, a window. This is a spoon. It's shiny. I use it to eat. This is my chair. I sit here every day. It felt silly at first.
But you kept doing it.
Every day. Morning, afternoon, night. Slowly, something incredible started happening. My brain stopped translating. Instead of thinking in my native language first, I started thinking directly in English.
That must have felt like a breakthrough.
It really did. One night, something even stranger happened.
What happened?
I had a dream, and in that dream, I was speaking English fluently.
Wow.
When I woke up, I sat up in bed thinking, my brain is learning. That moment gave me hope for the first time in years.
And that was just the beginning, right?
Exactly. Because little by little, I started doing more. I spoke to myself in the mirror. I recorded my voice. I watched short clips and repeated sentences. And slowly, the fear that once controlled me started disappearing.
Daniel, your story is incredible.
Thank you, Clara.
But I think the moment many listeners are waiting to hear about is the first real conversation you had in English, the moment you realized you could actually do it.
Yes, I remember that day perfectly. It started with a message from a friend online.
So, Daniel, you mentioned that message from a friend online. What happened next?
Yes, that moment was very important for me. I had been chatting for a few weeks with someone I met on a language exchange app. Her name was Isabel. She lived in Canada. We mostly texted. Writing was still easier for me.
That makes sense.
But one evening, she sent me a message that made my heart race.
What did she say?
She said, "Hey Daniel, would you like to try a short voice call this weekend? Maybe just 5 minutes?"
Oh, wow.
Yes, just reading that message made my palms sweat. I stared at the screen for almost 15 minutes.
What were you thinking?
My first thought was, say no. Make an excuse. Say you're busy. Say your internet is bad. Say anything.
I think many English learners know that feeling.
Exactly. But then another voice inside my head said something different. You've been training for this. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try.
That must have taken courage.
It did. My hands were shaking when I typed the reply. But I wrote, "Yes, let's try."
Wow.
That night, I barely slept.
Really?
Yes, I kept imagining the conversation again and again. "Hi, how are you?" "I'm good. How about you?" "What's the weather like there?" I practiced those sentences in my head like an actor rehearsing lines before a play.
But the fear was still there.
Very much. For me, this wasn't just a 5-minute call. It felt like a test of everything I had been working on.
The big moment.
Exactly. Sunday evening arrived. The call was scheduled for 7 o'clock. At 6:58, my phone started vibrating. Incoming call. Isabel.
That must have been intense.
My finger hovered over the screen for a moment. Then I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello."
And what happened?
There was a small pause. Then I heard her voice. Cheerful, friendly. She said, "Hi, Daniel. It's so nice to finally talk to you."
That sounds very kind.
It was. But in that moment, something strange happened. Everything I had practiced disappeared.
You froze again?
For a few seconds, yes. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My heart was beating so fast. Finally, I forced the words out. Hi, Isabel. Nice to talk to you.
Not perfect, but real.
Exactly. And something beautiful happened. She didn't judge me. She didn't laugh. She simply said, "Take your time. You're doing great."
That must have helped a lot.
It did. Those words felt like medicine for my fear. So we started talking. Very slowly, I told her about my day. Simple sentences. I woke up early. I went to work. I'm a little tired today.
And she asked questions?
Yes, very simple ones. What food do you like? What's your favorite movie? Do you like your city?
And you answered.
Slowly, but yes. Sometimes I paused. Sometimes I said, "Wait, I'm thinking." But I never gave up.
And how long did the call last?
It was supposed to be 5 minutes, but it became 18 minutes.
That's amazing.
In those 18 minutes, I learned something powerful.
What did you learn?
That it's okay to be slow. Conversation is not a race. People don't need perfect grammar. They just need to understand you.
That's such an important lesson.
I also made mistakes. At one point, I said, "I very like pizza."
I think many learners say that.
Exactly. Isabel laughed kindly and said, "You mean you really like pizza." And just like that, I learned something new.
From a real conversation.
Yes, not from a textbook, not from a grammar exercise, from connection.
That call must have changed your confidence.
Completely. After the call ended, I just sat there in silence. My heart was still racing, but I felt something new. Freedom.
Freedom?
Yes, for the first time in my life, I had spoken English with a real person and survived.
Not only survived, you succeeded.
That's true. The next morning, I started a new habit.
What was it?
I began recording my voice every day.
Like a diary.
Exactly. I would open the recorder on my phone and talk for 5 or 10 minutes about my day, about my thoughts, about anything.
And then you listened to it?
Yes, and at first it was painful. My accent sounded strong. My sentences were slow. My grammar wasn't perfect.
But you kept doing it.
Every day. Slowly, I noticed 3 big changes.
What were they?
First, my ideas started flowing faster. I didn't pause as much. Second, my vocabulary grew. Every time I forgot a word, I wrote it down and learned it later. And third, my fear disappeared.
Because you were speaking every day.
Exactly. Speaking became normal, not scary.
So when did the next big challenge appear?
About a month later, I received a message from a company I had applied to months earlier.
Let me guess, an interview?
Yes, a full video interview in English.
That must have felt like a huge moment.
It did. The old voice in my head said, "You can't do this." But the new voice said something different. "You've been preparing for this every day."
So what did you do?
I trained for 2 days. I practiced answering questions out loud. I stood in front of the mirror. I recorded myself. I imagined the interview again and again.
Visualization.
Exactly. Then Sunday morning arrived, 10 o'clock. The Zoom calls started.
Were you nervous?
My hands were shaking, but my mind was calm.
What was the first question?
"Tell me about yourself."
The classic question.
I took a breath and said, "My name is Daniel. I come from a small town. I've worked in customer support for 2 years, and recently I've been focusing on improving my English so I can work in an international environment."
That sounds clear and confident.
It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and they listened.
How long did the interview last?
It was about 30 minutes. When it ended, I closed my laptop and just sat there. My shirt was wet from sweat, but I had done it.
That must have felt incredible.
The next morning, I received an email.
Let me guess. The subject line said, "Congratulations."
Wow. I read it slowly. We were impressed with your communication and confidence. Welcome to the team.
That must have been emotional.
I actually sat on the floor and cried. Not because I got the job, but because I proved something to myself, that the silent boy from years before had finally found his voice.
Daniel, that must have been an unforgettable moment.
It really was, Clara. I sat there on the floor for a long time, just staring at the email. For years, I believed something about myself. I believed that English was not for me, that other people could speak it, but I couldn't. And in that moment, that belief completely broke.
Because now you had proof.
Exactly. Not from a teacher, not from a certificate, but from real life. A real company had trusted me enough to hire me.
What happened next?
2 weeks later, I started the job.
How did the first day feel?
Honestly, terrifying and exciting at the same time. My team was international. People from India, Germany, Canada, Singapore, and the United States.
Wow, that's a lot of different accents.
Exactly. On the first day, we had a group meeting online. Everyone was speaking English very fast. Different accents, different expressions.
Did that bring back some fear?
For a moment, yes. The old version of me would have done one thing.
What?
I would mute my microphone and stay silent the whole meeting.
I think many people listening have done that before.
Absolutely. But this time, something inside me had changed. I reminded myself, you didn't come this far just to stay silent.
That's powerful.
So I listened carefully during the meeting. People were discussing a project launch. One person said they wanted to release it immediately. Another said they needed more customer feedback.
And then?
Then something surprising happened. My brain created a sentence in English without translating.
Really?
Yes. And before I could overthink it, I spoke. I said, I agree with the idea, but maybe we should wait 1 more week before launching. We might get clearer customer feedback.
Wow, that sounds very natural.
When I finished speaking, there was a short silence, and my heart started racing again.
What were you thinking?
I thought maybe I said something wrong. Maybe my sentence didn't make sense.
And what happened?
My manager nodded and said, That's actually a good point, Daniel.
That must have felt incredible.
Clara, I can't even explain that feeling, because that sentence may sound normal to other people, but to me it meant everything. It meant that I wasn't translating anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was thinking directly in English.
That's a huge milestone for any language learner.
Exactly. And from that moment, my life started changing in ways I never expected.
How so?
First, my work life changed. I started speaking with international clients every week, writing emails, attending meetings, solving problems in English.
And every conversation made you stronger.
Yes, not because I was perfect, but because I kept showing up.
What else changed?
My friendships. I started talking with people from many different countries. We shared stories, we laughed. Sometimes we even talked about our struggles learning languages.
That must have felt very different from the days when you felt invisible.
Completely different. Before, I felt like I had ideas trapped inside my mind. Now I could finally share them.
And how did this affect your confidence?
This might be the biggest change. Before, when someone spoke English around me, I would look down. I didn't want them to ask me anything.
And now?
Now, I look people in the eyes. I join conversations. I share opinions. English didn't just improve my communication, it healed my confidence.
That's a beautiful way to say it.
And the most interesting thing is this. At some point, I stopped saying something.
What did you stop saying?
I stopped saying, I'm learning English.
Really?
Yes. Instead, I started saying, I speak English.
That's a powerful shift in identity.
Exactly. Because when you say, I'm learning, your brain believes you're still behind. But when you say, I speak, your brain starts acting like a speaker.
That's such an important message for learners.
And Clara, I want to share something directly with everyone listening right now.
Please do.
If you feel afraid to speak English, if you feel embarrassed, if you feel like your voice doesn't sound good, I understand you. I was that person.
And what would you tell them?
Don't wait until you feel confident. Speak first. Confidence comes later. Speak badly, make mistakes, get stuck, pause, laugh at yourself, and then speak again.
Because every sentence is progress.
Exactly. Fluency isn't built in one day. It's built sentence by sentence, day by day.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing this story with us today.
Thank you, Clara. It really means a lot.
And to everyone listening, remember something important. You are not too late. You are not too slow. And you are definitely not alone.
Your English voice is already inside you.
You just need to start using it.
One sentence at a time.
And your English journey
Can start today.